Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source special Spawn-focused episode for you today. I have the creator and creative mind behind Spawn in his many forms over all media, Todd McFarlane, coming back on the show. Todd, good to see you, my man.
Yeah, how you doing today? How things going at your end?
Oh, they're fantastic. They're fantastic. And it's been a big year for Spawn. Todd, you successfully had another Kickstarter for the most, I think the last time you were on the show, you said it was the most detailed figure you've ever done with the medieval Spawn on Kickstarter. Obviously, you had more titles in the Spawn universe launch. And just, yeah, a lot of really good things happening and more to come. So looking back over this past year, how do you feel it's going in terms of Spawn and your other creations, and how are things over there at Todd McFarlane Productions?
Yeah, it's interesting, Jace. I'm not very big on worrying about yesterday. I always think like my best day is tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Like today and tomorrow. So you do the best you can. You do your ideas, you put it out, and then you sort of give birth to it by basically making it public, and then you move on, right, to the next thing. I mean, what you can get from the past is sort of the data that comes from it. I mean, and, if you set sort of internal goal and you meet them or exceed them, then you have to assume you did more right than wrong. And if you fall below your intended goal, then you go, maybe we missed our mark. What could we do better next time, right? So you can do a little bit of autopsy, but for the most part, you just go. You hit and go, and you hit and go, and you hit and go, and next thing you know, you're up to 360 issues of a comic book, right? They're not all perfect, right? Every page isn't awesome. Every cover isn't awesome. But over time, you build a body of work that people then can sit back and enjoy. So 2024 was us expanding into, as you mentioned, some comic books. We'll continue to do that at a bit of a slower pace in 2025. And then we'll just look at the data and see what people want. I mean, look at everybody sort of tells us what they want or what they don't want by their dollars, by their pocketbook, right? If you buy a lot of it, I assume you want more. If you buy a little of it, I assume you're not overly interested. And then we just move forward from there.
Yeah, and it's amazing because nostalgia is a powerful thing. You know, those dioramas are doing well. You talked about the last time you were on, but like you said, to your point, it's about the new things. What's next? What's going to get us excited? It's fine to look back and be a little nostalgic, but it's about reaching the new generation of readers and what have you. And so today specifically, we're going to focus on that, everybody. So if you're not aware, issue 360 of Spawn, the original series that started, way back in 92, it comes out on New Year's Day, which is very appropriate because in a way where the storyline is, it's almost a new chapter, a new beginning. And you yourself, Todd, are coming back to handle the writing duties with 360. So give us some background into what went into that decision and tease what's to come and what you're most excited to build out returning to the writing duties.
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of the book, right, then I've written the vast majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know at some point I have to try and figure out what's the record of one person writing the most issues of one title, right? I mean, obviously Eric Larson has written every one of his Savage Dragon, but I don't know. I don't know if how many issues Chris Claremont did of the Uncanny X-Men. I'm talking about like one title.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe, I mean, oddly, I might actually have the record, right? Most people consider me to be, an artist, but I actually may hold a couple of writing records. I do for sales, right? So
Right.
this is always sort of weird, which is actually my point about art, which is I think that art is a minimum of 51% of comic books. And how do I know that? Because the number one selling book in 2021 was uh, King Spawn, and before that was like issue 300, like and then Gunslinger, and then Scorched and stuff. And some of these books, like the majority of them I wrote. So we can either say Todd McFarlane is one of the great writers of comic books, or he's just smart enough to put really good artists on really good characters, and he happened to have written it, right? Because if your reasoning as to how you define good writers as sales, then oddly, I'm in the mix of those conversations,
Right.
Between issue 300 and some of the spin-off books we've done and whatever else. But to go back to your question of 360, Brett Booth is drawing that book now, right? And Brett and I had a pretty nice relationship when we began the Gunslinger #1 that got out of the gates hard. And so I was just chit-chatting with him because he'd been over there. Everyone's like, man, we got to find something we can do together. But we both knew that we were kind of busy with our regular gigs, and we couldn't really add anything. And so it was just like, hey, I'm writing a Spawn book already. It's called King Spawn, right? Rory McConville had taken over Spawn after I'd done my big long run on it. And I just wanted to get a fresh set of eyes on the book. But it was, just kind of as simple as, hey, we're coming to a point where we want to do a shift. I have an idea what I want to do into the Spawn universe. So, why don't we just, Rory and I just switch? We're both still writing Spawn books. And then you and I get to sort of go have some fun, and we'll hit the ground running by doing kind of the opposite of what we've been doing for about a year in the comic books, which is everybody had lost their powers, right? Everybody. Like whether you were heaven, hell, superhero, whatever. Everybody, anybody that had been sort of from one of those sort of other realms, if you will. So the books, that includes both Spawn, Gunslinger, and Scorch, which is our team book. They were essentially Batman books, right? We went from Superman to Batman, right? So still fun stuff, but in theory, the characters could now get a bullet in the head and die. So we've been doing that, and what that did was that like both the heaven and the hell powers all went down to zero, but it didn't touch the vampires, and the vampires who've always been the stepchild jumped up to the lead. Right, so they became the power brokers. But I said, hey, Brett, when we jump on 360, it'd be kind of the prequel, and then from there out, like we'll go sort of big and wild and crazy. The powers are going to come back, not only for Spawn, but for everybody from heaven and hell and in between are going to come back, and they'll all be on Earth at that point. And it's going to go public, right? Because the majority of the mythology of Spawn has been kind of hidden away from human eyes. And so, and I'm talking about the humans in the Spawn comic book. And so we'll turn it on its head. We'll go from being like this sort of non-powered year of sort of, Batman-esque kind of storytelling, and now let's just go and we're back to being able to do big grand Jack Kirby, Stan Lee kind of stuff, and that's where we're going to go. I basically I probably put a header at the top of the comic book. It'd be sort of called Hell on Earth, right? I'll literally open the floodgates, and it'd come. And the premise is that somebody needed, the Queen of Hell needed Spawn to do something, sort of needed a spark of his power. But if he doesn't have any powers, he's no good. Yeah. But the only way for her to turn the powers back on for him, she had to turn the powers back on for everybody. She was also the one that turned them all off. So it was like she just has a big giant switch. if you will, right? And she's like, ah, shit. Okay, now I need okay, flick. But I need him alive first off. And him being Batman isn't going to do it because this guy's a little bit reckless. So I need to get him a little more impervious so he doesn't basically drop dead before I need to use his spark. So I'm gonna have to turn it on. And Spawn's been having this debate about, is the world better off with nobody having powers, including myself? Or are we better off that I have powers and I can protect people, but then so does everybody else? And there's been no easy answer to it. But we went one extreme, we're going to find out whether the other one is any better or any worse. So it'll be two things that happen. It'll get big and bombastic because everything's going to come back. So it'll be fun to look at, and it's what Brett Booth thrives on drawing. Combined with, I hope, a layer of somewhat sophistication as to the motives of those characters and their bombast, right? So I just don't want it to be like, oh, you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, let's go. I want it to be way more meaningful than that. I've always told my writers, consider what's in the Spawn comic books, in the Spawn universe, to be the equivalent of like a world war. And if you think about it as a world war, in terms of who are the countries, who are going to be the allies, who are going to be the enemies, who are going to be the diplomats in between, who are going to be the spies, who can you trust only for a short time, right? I mean, allegiances will shift over time. If you think about it in those terms, then I think a lot of what's going on makes a lot more sense. But you have to sort of talk and think and have the characters motivated in ways that they would be motivated in a big geopolitical war. And that's it. So hopefully it looks good. And then you get a level of sophistication in the reading that is sort of a little bit above what we're used to out of superhero comic book.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that, I mean, first of all, everybody, Spawn, issue 360, right? I mean, broke the record with 301 being the longest-running creator-owned series. And the fact that it's lasted as long and still has a huge fan base, I think, speaks to kind of the relatability of the character and the richness of the world that you've created. We've had this conversation before, Todd. You talked about everybody's giving you a bad time when you started, and it's like, hey, how long did it take me to become a great artist? I'm just starting out as a writer. Let me get there. But the one thing that's always been the case, and we've talked about this as well, is you have so much Spawn knowledge in your head, right? Like these characters like live in your head, like things that people don't even know or realize that you've fleshed out. It's still fun for you. I can hear you talking about the plans and this world that exists in your head that, some of it comes out in the books, but some, it's hard to get it all out of your head, obviously. But it sounds like you're still having fun. You're, creating and building and inviting other creators to come and play in this world as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you're still just so excited?
Well, I think that, I think that you need to give some natural evolutions to your character, right? Maybe if they're institutional characters, you don't have to, right? Like you put somebody on the book, they write 30, 40 issues, and then you go and get somebody else, and then they kind of build upon what you have and repeat a lot of what you have, right? So Stan Lee does Spider-Man, Jerry Conway comes in, pays homage to it. Len Wein comes in, pays homage to that. Marv Wolfman comes in, pays homage to that. So people, to me, are kind of doing a little bit of rinse and repeat, right? And they're not changing. I've said before, and I did an interview, and I believe this to be true, that if Stan Lee had written 200 issues of Spider-Man, I think it would have evolved differently. I don't know whether it would have been better or worse, but it would have evolved because it's hard for me to believe that any creative person can sit there and do 200 issues of the same character and not want to change them somewhat along the way just for the creator's personal mindset. Because if you're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, you get bored creatively. So the one way to not get bored is to just sort of challenge yourself and say, hey, what if this? Hey, what if we did this? Hey, what if we did that? So, but by the nature of comic books right now, and especially Big Two, people come in for short sort of spurts, and it's easy to sort of replicate a lot of what was there before, and just do it again. Given that the guy who created Spawn #1 and is now writing 360 is the same dude, me. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to keep not only the reader excited, but myself. So I'm just going, how do we do it? Let's do it 250, was it basically 185, 185 issues where Spawn is like going, I don't want anything to do with any of this. Like, leave me alone. And then at 185 to 250, then we brought in the Jim Downey character, because the Spawn character essentially, took himself off the chessboard and went away. While he was gone, in my mind, he was learning the game. Right? For 185 issues, you're like, I don't even want to be part of the game. And just at the very end, he realized he will always be in the game. He finally got mature enough to go, I can't just say, everybody stay away. That isn't going to happen. So I'll take what will happen if I take myself off the chessboard? That should cause some consternations to some people, because I am a focus to people, and if I'm not there, what do they do? I don't know, but let's try it. And in the meantime, while I disappear, let me learn the game, so when I come back, I'm now a chess master. And I now know, this is the rules of the game. Oh, okay. Now I can play mono to mono. And by the way, where they were coming after me saying, and I was going, hey, leave me alone, I can go after them. And when I get to them, they're going to go, leave us alone, Spawn. Right? And I can sort of shift the tables. And then at 300, inadvertently, the time rip comes and all these characters come in, Gunslinger, Medieval Swan, villains, Heaven and Hell, they all pour in. And he's got to deal with whatever that fallout means. And as part of it, it also reintroduced the fact that since issue #1, the throne of hell had been empty. And then there is now a race to the throne that culminated in issue 350 of Spawn. And Spawn was thinking really hard of taking the throne himself, not because he wanted it or he wanted to be the king of hell, but because he couldn't let the two main characters that had a good chance of gaining it be there. At some point, you have to, the equivalent is bad terminology, dick block somebody, right? You have to just go, if it means I've got to sit on that throne against all my will and those two don't, I'll do it myself. But at the end, he came up with another way to basically go, I can put somebody else on the throne, and it keeps those two off. The problem is the throne corrupts, and Spawn knew that, which is one of the reasons he didn't want to sit on it, because he knew he could get corrupted himself, and at the time become arguably the greatest villain. So he put somebody else on, Nyx, who's the new Queen of Hell, and now that corruption has begun to get into her bloodstream, and now she's doing her thing, and now she needs, and this is sort of roundabout way of getting to why we need the powers back, she needs Spawn's spark to do this thing against Hell, I mean against Heaven, who's her mortal enemy, obviously. But not if he's dead. If he's Batman and he's dead and he falls out of a building, he's no good to me. And I'm not going to be able to do this thing I've been planning. And he doesn't have his power. So I gotta, if I basically give him his powers, that kind of keep him a little bit more impervious. So I've got to go. So I got to throw the whole entire switch on for that one guy. She's not really paying attention to what the fallout is, because she's in hell. She doesn't really care what the ramifications are on Earth. that'd be everybody else who lives there, including humanity. So that's where we're at. So those are the sort of the silly things that you play around in your mind with, right? I mean, again, I've got this mythology of like how Genghis Khan could be in heaven and how Mother Teresa can be in hell, because it doesn't work the way that we're taught biblically. And so you start taking ideas and turn them sideways or upside down or backward, and then you just go, let's just see what all of this ends up delivering, and when the fans respond to it, and does it keep all of us entertained, including myself, right? And so that's it. There's still lots of sort of open territory for me to explore, given the hundreds of threads that I put out there in the 360 issues. I put lots and lots of threads out there, and every now and then I just don't have the time to pull them. But I think each one of them is worth 5-6 issues alone. So I could go back and circle the sentence. There's the sentence right there. That is, to me, a miniseries, if you will.
Yeah, and what's great is you, like we said, you've invited other creators to come in and play with some of these other series. Whether it be the Deadly Tales of Gunslinger, which I just had Jimmy Palmiotti and Patric Reynolds on last week to talk about that.
Oh yeah, that book. I mean, let me brag on that book. Like we're doing a lot of new books, but that I'm really proud of that book. Because it delivered on all the goals that I wanted. One, first off, just do a high quality book, right? So I think they did. We gave 37 pages at $3.99, so we gave the best value that's on the marketplace for that issue number one. And then number two, I said, hey Jimmy, when we first began, I go, I want you to ground these stories, right? I want them to be gritty and feel real. Because I've got sort of the Spawn in the big sort of superhero corner covered, right? Let's offer something different, a little more sophistication. It's in the West. Patric's artwork is kind of cool, gritty. I wouldn't call it classic superhero by any stretch, but again, and that's a compliment to him, because he's got this look that fits perfectly with it. And then the read is kind of mature and brutal at the same time. And the reason all that matters, everything I just said, is because I want to be able to put out different kinds of books that people will read for different reasons, right? So Salmon Twitch is a detective book, and Misery is about a coming of age book, and Deadly Tales is our harsh Western book, and then we've got Rat City is set in the future, and Nowhere Home is coming out, sort of another quasi sort of future book. I want to be able to give different kinds of books, not with the hope that everybody will collect them. That's not a reality. But so if somebody says, I don't like what you're doing on Spawn, but I really like what you're doing on this other book, right? That's the victory. Don't walk away from the Spawn universe, because I'm going to try and give you 4, 5, 6 different tastes when you bite into it. And just basically then consume the things that taste good to you, and leave the others alone. So.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. In terms of Patric's art, the thing that we kind of settled on when Jimmy and Patric and I were talking was he can go wild in the action scenes, but he also does those kind of quiet, impactful moments really, really well. Jimmy was talking about, sometimes it's a very quiet book, 3 or 4 pages, no dialogue.
It is.
Yeah,
so it is. I mean, if anything, I remember I phoned Jimmy and I go, hey Jimmy, I think you did a hell of a job, you and Patric. I did some editing. I just want to warn you, most of the editing was me just eliminating a balloon. Yeah. Like, or eliminating a scream, or eliminating, a sound effect, or something like that. Because the visual to me was so strong that I go oddly by adding a balloon, a scream, and or a sound effect, I thought it was taking away from the the sort of the depth of the art of it. So I go, no. At times, you just have to say, get out of the way, right? Just let the artist be the artist. Here's the thing that's weird. In a movie, you would. Right? Especially in the action scene, right? When people are fighting, nobody's talking to each other. Yeah. We do that in comic books. So there are a decent amount of silent panel in Gunslinger, or excuse me, Deadly Tale of the Gunslinger, number one, that's just coming out here pretty soon. But I think I'm hoping people don't read it as like, oh, there's not enough writing it. They read it as that like they're kind of watching a movie. And this is how a movie would go down, right? And this is how it would feel. And in your mind, you're listening to the sound score of the horse sort of walking up, and you don't need to write clunk, 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 clunk. So, but anyways, it'd be interesting to see how people react to it, because it's a completely different book than what I'm writing with the modern day gunslinger that's in today's calendar.
Yeah, just remind everybody that Deadly Tales of Gunslinger is out December 18th. So you have a little bit of time, and definitely go listen to my conversation that I had with Jimmy and Patric, because to tie it into what we were talking about with so much in your head, the other thing that Jimmy mentioned I wanted to bring up with you was that he's like, Jimmy goes, yeah, every time I talk to Todd, he's got so much like Spawn knowledge in his head. Just when I'm talking to him, he'll say like one little thing and he doesn't give it a second thought, but I'm writing it down because I know, hey, I can make a story out of that. So it goes back to what you're saying about the threads and just how much of this world and mythology you've created in your head over the years, and how many seeds you've planted.
Yeah. So I'll give you like a big example of that. I haven't tried to give the answers to everything, because I want other creative people to come in and give those answers and surprise me, hopefully. But here's a big, easy, simple one, right? Like. So I had a character for years and years when he was a dwarf, the clown, right? Okay, so we got the clown, he's a bad guy, he goes after Spawn, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's the big question if I have my writers in front of me, any writer. Where does he go at night? When he's not fighting Spawn, where does he go? What does he do? I don't know. I've never followed him home.
Right.
But I've done that intentionally because I'm hoping that either at some point I'll get an epiphany and I go, there's the story. Or one of you writers, pitch me why you think that is, right? So, okay. And so we were the same with Jimmy. I was just saying, hey, Jimmy, like, here's things that the Gunslinger does, right? I got a little bit of reason or rationale, but he doesn't. But I'm leaving it like, what's the origin of that happening? Like, why? What forced him to do that the first time? He does it now, and we've seen he does it now. What was the first time? What was the impetus? What was the driving motivation to do it? Those are the stories. Those are the threads that you guys should pull, right? And every now and then I'll do a throwaway sentence of saying something along those lines, and then going, I don't know, anybody want to go there in that corner? Because I said something kind of big. I mean, if you're in my head, it was big, but it can get lost. Absolutely, in 360 issues, right? But there are probably 20, 30 places right now that I go, you could go there, you could go there, and you could go there. And all of those could expand into like some pretty big storytelling moment. But yeah, that's the problem with living with these guys. I Spawn in my head is way cooler than anything that I've ever put on the page, because I can talk about it all way more with way more intelligence and sophistication than when I actually get down to typing on it.
Well, the other thing that it does too, to your point earlier, Todd, was so many of these little ideas or little threads that you've planted. again, you can tell stories in different genres. You know, like you were saying earlier, hey, maybe this, more superhero type style of the main book is not for you. Maybe you do want to go and do the police procedural with Sam and Twitch, or maybe you want to go sci-fi with Rat City, or maybe you want to go old school Western with Deadly Tales. And having those ideas and bringing in other creators, I think, again, it creates a really rich world and something for everybody, something for every comic reader, or even fans that maybe are lapsed and haven't read Spawn for a while, or they're discovering Spawn for the first time. So as we're winding down here, give us an idea. Like, in your mind, what do you think, is 360 just a great place to jump on? You don't need to go back and reread anything, or should people dip in here or there? What if somebody say, hey, Todd, what should I read before I jump on 360? What would be your advice?
Probably maybe 350. Because that's the moment that Nyx gets put on the throne,
right?
And now and then she turned off the lights and took the powers away, and so you can kind of sort of skip over that if you want. And now she's turning the lights back on, and the question is, what's her plan? Why is she doing that? And what's the ramifications on Earth because of that? What's that going to matter? And more specifically, if you're buying Spawn, what's that matter to Spawn, right? And again, the light's going to get turned on for like Gunslinger and a couple other characters. What's the fallout of all of it? Look, I have this theory, Jace, that like being a hero should not be easy. This is the one truism in my head. It should not be easy. It should actually be difficult and it should at times hurt both emotionally and mentally. You should have to. It's like going again. If we use war, it's like going to war, right? If you go to war and you do your job, a lot of people come back and they have post-traumatic syndrome, right? Because that job was hard. Doing what you thought was the right thing. And defending people that you love. Okay, cool. But it took a toll on you, right? And so I don't think that just because somebody gets hit by a bolt of lightning, that automatically they become mentally strong or superior. And we do that with our heroes. It's just like, oh, I'm the hero. I got powers. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to have no self-doubts. I'm going to go do this. And I don't even really care whether I've got a family or brothers and sisters. I'm just going to go and do it, blah, 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 blah. And they just become a little bit cardboard cutouts to me, right? And so which is why I like watching drama movies, because at least you get character, right? So can we do a little bit of both? Can we give you the big things that you expect, especially in something like Spawn, still falls under kind of a superhero book, although in King Spawn and whatever, Spawn on his best day, I think is a creep book, is a horror book. You know, he can just come and scare the shit out of the bad guy. Batman on his best day, I think, is a creep book. So you have those elements that are there, but I don't know. Like, can you give the visuals which Bruce will knock out of the ballpark, and do this layer of the reasons and the rationale and the motivations for people that are more than just I want to beat you so I can be king of the hill. Right. I've read that story a million times. So, oddly for me, when I do like Sam and Twitch, that's the easiest book for me to write. Because to me, it's just two dudes talking to each other. And I was like, okay. Adults talking about adult stuff. But for some reason, when we get to superheroes, still adults, but we put juvenile dialogue on top of it. It bugs me. And I'm constantly asking my writers, can you write adult stuff? Can you write adult stuff? Can you? And again, I don't mean talking heads and talking about your pancreas or you've got like bunions or whatever. I'm talking about the voice that comes out of your mouth when you're saying what you're saying, right? Instead of it being bravado, being Broadway, of being sort of a cliche action movie line. Make it more of a drama line that's saying the exact same thing. right? But I don't know. I have a bias to what that is. Like listening to music, and you go, I like that music. I don't like that music. I see it in comic books. I definitely hear it a ton in TV and movie. Right? I can't listen to 80% of it because I just go, ugh. It's like. Somebody repeating a line that was typed by some writer. I can hear it instead of it sounding like real people in a real situation saying what I think they would have been saying kind of in that situation. When those happen, man, I cherish those movies and those TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, they're some of the best ones because they're relatable, right? Because it sounds more real, it sounds more grounded, and I think honestly, I think it's why Spawn is still going 360 issues later, because you can go back and we've had this conversation. You go back and read the earliest stuff. It's relatable. To your point about doing something heroic, it's hard. That's what makes it worth doing. That's what makes it heroic, because it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But also the fact that it's a love story, we can relate to that aspect of it. And yeah, I mean, so many of us have been reading these characters for so long, and they have grown and evolved. But it's still exciting because you're still having fun doing it. The creators you bring in, whether it be Erica Schultz or Mark Andreyko or Jimmy Palmiotti or Patric Reynolds or Brett Booth, whoever. I mean, just murderer's row of talent here. They're having fun. You're having fun. So we as readers and fans get to have fun too.
Yeah. And like I said, my expectation is that it's all for everybody. So I put out my creative smorgasbord and go, hey, I think I got 15 flavors. Put whatever you want on your plate, and go home with that. I'll be eternally grateful for you to sample any of it. Right? You don't have to take all of it, but characters that now, I think Spawn falls into the category because it's been around for over 30 years. Characters been around for a while. You have to every now and then just recalibrate them and figure out ways so they don't become fuddy-duddy, right? How do you make Mickey Mouse relevant to today's kids? I think it's hard. Because why? Because they've got Buzz Lightyear instead, and they've got Princess Jasmine or something. I mean, they've got Frozen. They've got their other ones that are the equivalent of what Mickey Mouse meant to generations earlier. But if somebody could make Mickey Mouse relevant, man. What's that story? What is it? What's that character doing now that's able to now come in and continue to basically be relevant to a whole new generation that sort of thought it was like mom's old car. Look, I'm getting old enough now. It's funny, this evolution. There was like everybody came in at the beginning. Remember 1992 Image comic books come out, right? And we're all flying pretty high, and we're going. And then Spawn's like one of the cool characters, one of the cool books. And then it sort of hit its wall. And when it hit its wall, it was sort of like the comic book industry was going down a little bit. People were jumping out. And then it was like, thought it's getting, a little passe, whatever. And then there was like a quietness, and I still had the hardcore fan. But now I've been around so long, and here's the value of longevity. I keep trying to say it out loud to people. Is why you keep going. Is that I'm now getting a ton of people coming up to my tables and stop saying, "Oh man, I like Spawn. I think he's cool. He's one of my favorites." And because my dad or my uncle read it, right? And they're now. I mean, all those people had kids during that process, but they were 4, 5, 6, 7. Spawn's not their jive. They're mojo that they're going to take home and go, yeah, man, this is our thing. So. But now they're 18, 19, 20. Why? Because Spawn's been around for 30 plus years. So if somebody was 15 when they were collecting it, they're 45. Yes, they could have children that are 20. So the next generation coming along, and they're sort of, we do this with sports and music and everything else, right? It's like, oh man, I like Star Wars. You should watch it, son. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so you should be a Cubs fan, son. Right? I mean, we do this anyways. And now I'm just starting to see it because I've been around long enough that they're doing it on the comic book end because I'm getting a lot of people. And I go, so maybe someday, Spawn gets outside the bubble, goes in a meaningful way out to the real world. Then maybe there'll be two generations waiting to see it and be curious about it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place to be. And anybody, if you haven't been reading Spawn or you've never read Spawn, again, 360, great time to jump on. Go back and read 350 as Todd recommended. The other thing is, I'm sort of envious that if you've never read it because you have so much to go back. You read this, you get hooked on it, you go back. You have years of reading that you can dive in. Todd does a great job of having collected editions and all that sort of stuff. So it's really a rich world. Come in and be part of the comic book reading community. We love to welcome new people and talk about it, no matter what generation you're from. And the last thing I'll say on that is the other way that you can help out Todd and your local comic book shop is pre-order, right? It's too late to order. The pre-orders for Final Order Cutoff for 360's already happened. But hey, get there. Now's the time. Tell your comic shop, hey, I'm going to be picking up Spawn. Set aside a copy of 360. The more you tell them, then they know, hey, I'm going to order, 361, 362, start a pull box, all that kind of stuff. Pre-ordering is the lifeblood of comic shops and comic publishers. I'm always going to remind you guys.
One other piece, right, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
And again, I keep butting up against it. I keep resisting it for as long as I can. It's been 15, 16, 17 years I was trying to figure out. My book is still $2.99. I haven't done a price increase in almost two decades, right? So I don't know how long I've been be able to sort of keep that going. But the only reason I bring that up is if you're curious, for the most part, it's an easy pickup, right? For $2.99, it's the cheapest price you're going to find for a 20-page comic book on the marketplace. So if you're curious, it's not going to break your wallet to try a sample one or there. And then we went up $1, but that's basically the norm of comic books. $3.99, a bunch of them $4.99. When you go up to $3.99, like with the Deadly Tale, you get 37 pages, almost two books for the price of one, right? So even at $3.99, it's still the best deal that's out there. So again, if you're going to do a curiosity, you're going to get a lot of sampling at a super reasonable price. And so I'm proud to be able to continue to deliver the product at the high quality at as low price as possible. I don't know, like I said, if I'll be able to do it forever, but been able to hold the line for almost 2 decades now.
Yeah, which is something I always appreciate, and it comes up from time to time on the podcast as well. Man, Todd still charges $2.99. Why are these people charging $4.99, $5.99? Come on, man. Todd can do it.
Don't get it either.
Yeah. So again, everybody, now's the time. If you've never read Spawn or you've read it, fallen off Lap Streeter, now's the time to come back. Because here's the other thing that I want to mention. There is a movie coming. Hopefully, we're going to get some movie news next year. Some big concrete movie news in 2025. When that happens, that's when more of the casual people start jumping in. These books could become harder to get. So, you can be a little bit ahead of the curve. We all want to be the cool kid, right? That when everybody else jumps on, you're like, I was already there. So that's the other part of this. There's a movie in the works. There's news coming. So again, now's the time to jump on. And if you want to go back and reread, and maybe it informs the movie and what have you, now's the time for that as well, right, Todd?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I've got a couple of meaningful meetings next week about the Spawn universe, right? So this is having conversations about the characters that are not called Spawn, right? Obviously, he's at the center of all of it, but I think there are characters like Gunslinger and Misery and Sam and Twitch and that can be their own sort of shows, TV shows, and not have to have necessarily costumes in all of them. That I could put out and get my daughters and my wife to watch. Especially if they don't like quote unquote superhero movies, then it's like here's they watch True Detective. So, okay, you can watch Sam and Twitch. They'll watch Euphoria. So, okay, well, here's Misery. Off to the side. And so to me, trying to do those kinds of different sort of at times genres have a value, because you never know when your next surprise hit's going to come from.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's story. We love story, and again, this is a rich world to play in. So, well, thank you so much for chatting, Todd. It's always great to talk story and comics and Spawn with you, my man.
Sure, appreciate you giving me the time.
If somebody wants to follow along, remind them where's the best place to get Spawn news and Spawn Universe news and what have you. Where's the best place?
I mean, we're on sort of the traditional places, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you can go to McFarlane.com or Spawn.com. It all eventually sort of pushes you into the vortex that gives you all the information. So, anyways, we're in a bunch of corners. If somebody just wants to do a little Google, they can find us pretty easily.
Great, and I'll put a link to the website and a couple of social medias in the show notes, everybody. So save you the trouble if you're having trouble finding them. So, again, Todd. Can't wait for 360. Can't wait to see what happens when the powers come back and it's literally hell on earth. So again, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's gonna be cool. I've seen because I get I'm working ahead of schedule here. So I've seen the visuals. Some of them are big, cool. Like I said, Brett Booth has so much unbridled energy. It's like it's interesting. My only complaint I've ever had with Brett, and he'll tell you, is that I go, you draw too much. I mean, it's literally my only sort of complaint to him. It's like, you draw too much. And it seems like an odd criticism, but it's only a criticism because it's like, where am I supposed to put the balloon? And you draw so much pretty stuff. My first rule is I never want a balloon to ever touch the body of any character, right? So if you put so much stuff and you make it so big, then man, I got to cut it into his leg. I don't want to cut it into his leg. So if you just shifted it over and left me some space, so you could have just made that smoke over there, because I could have put a balloon. So you didn't have to draw basically the encyclopedia library and index every single book on it like he's a madman. He did a page the other day. And it was intentional, because I go, I'm going to get him through this page quick. And he's like, I felt like I was cheating. It's like, cheating? We just have deadlines. Every page doesn't have to be like a piece of work. But then I gave him this double-page spread that I knew would be a little bit easier than most double-page spreads, but would look magnificent, because I know him. And he was belly aching, because he's like, I felt like I was cheating on a double-page spread. And then I saw it. And then I went, that's you're cheating, Kate? Like, oh my gosh. Well, if I can get through a page in less than 3 hours, I think I'm cheating. I go, you did that page in 3 hours? Oh my gosh. So he's just a crazy guy, right? Like, there's not too many sort of guys like him. But I also know in the back of my mind, I owe it to all my creative people to pace them through the rigors of doing a monthly comic book. Mm-hmm. If you're always at volume 10 on every page, you're asking a lot from your creative people, especially your penciler. And it's like, you have to give them like a couple off pages. They can still look good and fun and cool. But it doesn't have to be like a million people on them and stuff like this, right? So it's one of the reasons why years ago I created the reporter page.
Yeah.
It's it serves two purposes. One, it gets information across that the hero themselves cannot or should not be getting across, right? Somebody else has to be saying it. And you can get a lot of exposition in one page that can fill in a lot of the gaps of what's going on, so I don't have to waste pages on sort of silly stuff. And two, once you've drawn that reporter page once as the artist, it's done. It's done. So every time I do a reporter page for my artist, basically that's a free day for them. They still get paid for it. I pay them the exact same amount. But it's basically a stat page that they did before. Sometimes they'll go in there, Brett, one of them, will go in there and do different backgrounds because he just can't just take a day off, right? But again, it's like, okay, good. So you had a nice leisurely day. You get to go spend some time with your family. You get to go do a couple errands that you maybe got behind on, and you just get to take a little bit of a break. Cool. And then tomorrow you come back and maybe you'll be mentally fresher. And if I do that mindset, I might keep my creative people slightly longer than if I just basically am just burning them out. So, anyways, having lived on all the different sides of the fence, I know what it's like to do each one of the disciplines, and I'm trying to be mindful of that. Of just going, I'd rather you do 40 issues for me, 50 issues that are pretty damn good, than to do 22 really fantastic, perfect balls out issues. I'd rather have 50 for me.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I know the way Brett is too. Even if you give him the easiest page and there's not much happening in the panels, he'll do a dynamic panel layout to make it.
Someday. He did one, and I just like, oh man, I should have made two panels of just a blood drip, right? It's like he just went crazy on the ones that I thought were going to be easy shots. But anyways, that's it. That's it. Makes him so good.
So again, everybody, be sure you're picking up Spawn with Todd's words, Brett's amazing line work,
and they like Spawn in the last couple of years. Rory McConville is not going anywhere. We just switched places. Rory's over at King Spawn now.
Yeah, Rory, fantastic talent as well. So again, everybody, Spawn 360 out on New Year's Day. Pick it up. Don't forget Deadly Tales of Spawn out December 18th as well. So that's going to do it for this episode. Deadly Tales of Gunslinger out on December 18th. So again, Todd, thanks so much for joining us. Happy holidays to you and yours.
All right, you be good.
And to everybody out there joining us, whether you're checking us on a YouTube or the audio-only feed, we appreciate you joining as always, and we'll talk to you next time.